This is a slideshow on differentiation based on readiness, interest, and learning style by Charlie Borek, Matt Cada, Becca Bryson, and Eric Zimmerman. In these slides, we'll talk about these three different ways of differentiating, like we read about in chapters 8, 9, and 10 of How to Differentiate Instruction based on Mixed Ability Classrooms. First, differentiation through readiness. A good readiness match pushes the student a little beyond his or her comfort zone and then provides support in bridging the gap between the known and the unknown, says Tomlinson. As teachers, it is our job to learn the diverse needs of our students. It is a non-negotiable topic. In essence, we become students of our students. Continuously throughout the year, we need to discover our students' ability level. Students will either be on level, below level, or above level. However, this may vary by topic, lesson by lesson, or day by day. As educators, we need to be diligent in figuring out where our students fall. We can do this by analyzing data from standardized test assessments, speaking to past teachers, speaking to parents, administering pre-tests, or most importantly, talking and meeting with our students. We need to really know our students in order to provide them with effective learning opportunities. One tool that can help guide educators in effectively differentiating their instruction is the equalizer tool. The visual on the slide will help teachers fine-tune their past lessons or fine-tune them as they create new lessons. Just like adjusting the equalizer buttons on a stereo to get the best sound, we can adjust the buttons on the equalizer tool to equalize their chances for success in our classroom. When deciding how to adjust the buttons, we should ask ourselves the following questions. Do my students need more of a foundation of the content, or do they already understand what it means and need to transform that understanding? Does the information I present need to be concrete or abstract? Does the lesson need to be simple or complex? Should I include single-faceted problems or multifaceted problems? Should we take a small leap or a big leap with this topic? Should lessons be very structured or open-ended? Will students be working dependently or independently? Will the pacing be too slow, or should the pacing be slow, or should it be fast? The important takeaway is that we might answer these questions differently for each student in our classroom. We may need to adjust to the right or the left depending on each student. Here are some troubleshooting tips when using the equalizer tool to differentiate. Student lessons need to be coherent, powerful, transferable, authentic, and meaningful. Some students should not be consigned solely to drill and practice, while other students get to participate in more engaging and enriching activities. Students should be pushed a bit beyond their comfort zone. Lessons should stretch all students beyond their comfort zone. Each lesson should have various levels of a genuine problem. Students should feel challenged but still able to successfully meet the challenge. Push students to work up. Expectations should be high for all students, not necessarily identical, but high in a way that stretches students to meet a challenge. Avoid the one-size-fits-all approach. One real-life example of differentiating through readiness is the use of the very popular Literacy Cafe, CAFE being an acronym for comprehension, accuracy, fluency, and expanded vocabulary. This teaching and learning strategy was developed by Gail Boshi and Joan Mosier as a way to help students become more successful in reading. The strategy focuses on these four most important components of reading. It stems off of the Daily Five: read to self, listening to reading, read to someone, word work, and write to self. As students build stamina in these 5 areas, the teacher meets with students individually and in small groups to practice pertinent strategies. Students and teachers set individual goals based on CAFE, and students work on these goals independently, with their teacher and in small groups. Students are much more engaged and accountable for improving their reading. Flexible grouping allows students to meet their goal and set new goals to continue to improve their reading. Displays for the system are set up on a classroom wall, and the reading strategies are added daily or weekly. Technology can be used to help students meet their goal as well by recording themselves read if there was some goal for accuracy or fluency, recording each day and comparing their recordings to see if they have met their goal. Students can also listen to reading on their devices. The teacher can also encourage students through email messages and keep students engaged and motivated. This way of teaching really hones in on an individual's needs. Now we'll talk about differentiation based on student interests. Tomlinson explains, a wise teacher knows that a key feature in artful teaching is having a plan to engage or hook the students on the topic at hand. Some key things to consider when doing this are students' current interests or expanding the students' interests. Some other motivators that could help as well are giving students choices on assignments or giving them assignments where they're allowed to be creative. Impact on teaching. Interests are, in a way, windows of the world. A developed interest in one area is almost inevitably a route to learning about many other things. Create a positive feedback loop where students are intrinsically motivated to succeed. Students observe other students' quality work and are motivated also to do quality work. Students use creative energy to produce meaningful products. Students may not even feel like they are working because you as an educator have made it fun when differentiating by interest. Some strategies for this type of differentiation could be providing structure but leaving an open invitation for students' input and success. Go public, make a scene, and share. Because students taking pride in their work can become contagious, this is where you show off the successes that have gone into students' work. Take advantage and create a culture for learning. For some students, the greatest gift a teacher can give them is permission to explore a topic, says Tomlinson. One example of differentiating by interest at my work is in my classroom. On every concert night, I designate time for students' projects. Students really enjoy presenting their music that they've been working on outside of class. Most pieces are planned, rehearsed, and presented without the teacher having to do much extra effort. It's a big boost to student involvement, and students find it very rewarding to present their pieces to the public. We may also choose to differentiate a lesson by our students' learning profiles or learning styles. We all know that each individual learner learns differently. When we differentiate by learning profile or learning style, we are trying to match the learners with their preferred method for learning. Asking students to learn in ways that are not effective for them can make learning feel awkward, foggy, or disjoint. Helping our students learn in a way that is most effective and comfortable for them will produce their greatest gains and help them get the most out of their learning. There are 4 categories of learning profile factors or preferences that teachers can use to help plan instruction for students: learning style, intelligence, gender-based, or culture-based preferences. Learning style preferences include some popular ones that many of us have heard of, like visual, auditory, and kinesthetic, but there are also some other preferences that can benefit a learner, like whether they are allowed to move around during the activity or whether they have to sit in one spot, or whether the room is very busy that they're working in or whether it's more spare. There are some different theories on the categories of intelligence preferences, but in general it's the idea that each of us has some different intelligence areas that we are stronger at. Some students may be stronger with mathematics, while others are stronger with linguistics. Or students are more comfortable working with practical information versus analytic information, and yet others like the opportunity to be creative in their assignments. Gender-based preferences are patterns that have influenced us over time. These can be factors to consider when differentiating, but are not necessarily set in stone. For example, typically boys do prefer more competitive style learning, where girls prefer more of a collaborative approach, but it could be different for any student. Culture-based preferences are environmental influences that we have experienced that can affect our learning. Because of how we have grown up, we may prefer group learning over individual learning. Or maybe we prefer more reflective or are more reflective in our learning than impulsive. Or we like material that's more contextual rather than discrete. There are many different strategies that can be effective when trying to differentiate through learning profile. On page 65 of our book, Tomlinson lists a variety of them for teachers. They include, but aren't limited to, varying teacher presentation, where the teacher uses different modes to communicate the lesson to the students. They could use auditory, visual, or kinesthetic approaches, or they could present the information whole to part or part to whole. It could also vary student mode of expression, where students are allowed to use their strengths to show what they know based on either Gardner's or Sternberg's intelligences. Some other ones you'll see on the visual here. Teachers could also differentiate by using work choice arrangements, the format approach, entry points, complex instruction, multiple modes of assessment, or organizers. Differentiation can be very helpful when trying to meet individual students' needs, but there are some guidelines that teachers should keep in mind when differentiating to make it the most effective for their students. First, teachers need to remember that not all students will share their exact learning preferences. As teachers, we know what works best for us, so we tend to focus on those methods when teaching our students. But we need to remember that only teaching students techniques that were beneficial to us are not going to be beneficial for every learner. That is where differentiation comes in, and we need to offer those alternative avenues for learning. Second, depending on how young your students are, they may or may not know the best way they learn, or even that there are different ways that each of them learns. We need to help our students find their preferences for not only themselves to know, but so that we can help them use that preference to get the most out of their learning. Third, for each class there's a good balance between teacher-structured and student choice differentiation that you need to find. All students need some of both, and we need to know how to find how much of it works for each class. And lastly, maybe most importantly for differentiation, we need to be a student of our students. Differentiation takes a lot of preparation by the teacher. For it to work, we need to know what is best for each student to help them be successful. We need to learn, know, and understand what works best for our students before we can effectively differentiate for them. Trying to differentiate without knowing our students would be like asking them to perform tasks like baking a cake or building a desk, but then giving them the wrong directions, wrong tools, or wrong supplies to work with. To effectively differentiate, we need to know what each student needs to learn and provide them with the correct options and support. Here's an example of what a lesson differentiated by learning profiles could look like. This unit is for 8th grade students who are reading the Diary of Anne Frank for English class. At the end of the unit, students are allowed to create different products to show what they have learned. The teacher gives students many options for what they could do, but here are 3 examples that could appeal to 3 different types of learners. Auditory learners could give a radio broadcast of what it might have been like, giving them war updates, what it was like around the country at that time, and updates on people they knew. Visual learners can draw pictures of what they think Anne might have drawn in her diary, depicting her joys and fears at the time. Kinesthetic learners can create a diorama of Anne and her family's living arrangements, pointing out and focusing on things that were important for their survival. The teacher still provides a rubric or list of expectations for students so they know what the requirements are, but students are able to show their understanding of Anne and her family situation using any of these modes. Students all have the 3 characteristics that are summarized in earlier slides. We as teachers can use this knowledge learned in the lesson to help motivate our students to continue to grow in education. In our discussions this week, we worked on expanding our understanding of student readiness, interest, and learning style through a series of questions. From these questions, we came up with our own list of most valuable information. In relation to readiness, our group focused on Carol Ann Tomlinson's equalizer model and finding ways for our students to work up to their readiness level. This is achieved through teachers using instruction that matches the skills and understanding of students' ability levels, allowing students the opportunity to work without feeling overwhelmed or bored, having students push themselves to find a sweet spot in learning. With student interest, our discussion revolved around finding what interests the students or teachers who can ignite the fire within their students. Once a teacher gets the interest of the students, you work to keep them hook, line, and sinker. If a student is not actively engaged or interested in the lesson, they do not learn the content as well as a student who is actively involved in learning the lesson. By using the interest of the students to turn more intrinsic motivation in their learning. Finally, with student learning styles, we know that everyone has their own preference when it comes to learning new things. Discovering students' learning styles can be done through questionnaires or surveys. We discuss multiple intelligences, looking at different choices as we as teachers could give our students. Within these choices, technology was a very powerful resource for teaching to differentiate learning styles. Thanks for watching our presentation.